Welcome back to the channel. This game continues the Plovdiv tournament. This was the round 8 game, and Nigel's opponent was Manuel Rivas and I am from Spain. The game started as an English opening. And the Symmetrical fee and chess over variation. Very quiet opening. All normal development moves. I just decided to play g6, maybe d6, maybe g6 was an option. And white strikes in the centre. Simple trades happen. White prepares to fianchetto bishop on b2. And Nigel expands on the queen side. Obviously, the pawn can't be taken as the knight on c3 would be hanging. Nigel plays e5, which kind of leaves the d pawn a bit backward. He's obviously hitting the rook, but maybe b4 kicking the knight would have been better. It's a clever idea from white to not take back the pawn immediately, but to defend it indirectly by putting the rook on c1. And now white recaptures the pawn. And he has quite a nice knight on b6, asking black the question whether he wants to take on c4, but where he can recapture with the knight and put more pressure on the d pawn. Nigel opts to move the rook, conceding the c file. And here's a bit of a weird move in the fact that the knight can now be traded and leaves white with an isolated d pawn. And also allows black to strike in the centre to get some control of it himself. And white tries to clamp down on the queen side, hitting the b pawn. And here white offers the trade of queens, which Nigel accepts. The game's still fairly balanced. White has a majority on the queen side, and black has quite a strong centre. Getting his bishop onto a better diagonal. And expanding on the king side, and going to push with f4 at some stage. White re-grabs the open c file. A bit more movement, but black seems to be over the worst now. He seems to have quite a nice position, and the bishop finally gets onto a good diagonal, putting pressure on the e pawn. White tries to carry on the queen side to create a pass pawn, and black defends. Maybe pawn takes pawn would have been better here. which would have left white with the passed a pawn. And here black puts pressure on the centre. Obviously the e pawn's pinned to the king. And perhaps decides to take with the pawn, which is a bit positionally a bit unsound. Maybe king to g2, getting out of the pin would have been a better move. And now white has weaknesses. He has the back with the e pawn. And if the e pawn falls, then the d pawn will be isolated again. And Nigel decides to take the pawn. And then plays a very nice move, utilising the pin of on the bishop to rook and e1. This is really the only move that can defend the bishop. And this puts pressure on the d pawn, which white defends. And here Nigel decides to double up the rooks, but maybe h5, getting the king's pawns rolling, would have been a better option. This also allows white to potentially play the exchange sacrifice of bishop takes b6. After this variation, I think white's fine. He's got 2 pawns for the exchange and the passed b pawn. And there's plenty of counterplay. Even though black is still slightly better and there's material up, white has good compensation and good counterplay. He didn't play that, he played king to f2 to defend the bishop. And Nigel plays bishop to g4, a slightly odd move. I think rook to f8 would have been a better option. And then, as mentioned before, maybe h5 to get the pawns rolling on the king side would have been stronger. Again, black can simply take the bishop, and I think goes into the variation we had before, where after the exchange sacrifice, he's got the dangerous b pawn for compensation. Pasta didn't do that. He played bishop to b3, and that really does allow white to start rolling on the king side, which Nigel doesn't do. He plays bishop to h5, but I think again h5 would have been a much better move. And here Nigel opts to try and simplify the position. And obviously the idea is that the rook is now pinned. And it's very difficult to see many moves for white in this position. He seems to be in a bit of a bind. And Nigel can sort of just keep applying pressure. And white's forced to sort of shuffle around. Bring the king towards the centre. Eventually he's going to try and get to f4 and hit the rook. And here actually white plays the blunder bishop to b3, which allows Nigel to actually take the rook. And after the rook he recaptures, the king can come forward, and there's no way to stop king to f4, winning the whole rook, and black will simply just be a piece up. A very nice game by Nigel, very positionally, very good. Obviously the blunder of bishop b3 helped win the game quicker, but structurally was quite sound and achieved an advantage during the middle game, which he held and managed to find the win. This moved to Nigel to +2 for the tournament and was doing very well, and still in search of that elusive third GM norm. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and I'll be back with some more videos soon. Bye for now.